to stream. So by the time I'll get my laptop fixed, this is what it's going to be on Twitch. So this is the book I'll be talking about. It's called Endurance, the extraordinary true story of my year in space by Scott Kelly. It's a very interesting book. It is what it says. So this guy spent a whole year in space, and now he is telling his story, which I find it to be quite interesting. So yes, Scott Kelly is a retired astronaut and International Space Station commander, and he became the longest serving American in space. So yes, I'm trying to keep it mediumly short because my phone battery probably won't take all this Twitch stream. So yes, he dedicates his book to Amiko, his long-time partner, a very nice lady. So, as I previously talked about Shackleton, this book made me search for Alfred Lansing's Shackleton's book. So a man must shape himself to a new mark. Directly the old one goes to ground. Sir Ernest Shackleton, the explorer and the captain of the Endurance. So yes, prologue. So he says that after coming back from space, he started to appreciate the little things. It's a simple thing, sitting at a table and eating a meal with those you love. And many people do it every day without giving it much thought. So yes, it's quite important to appreciate the beauty of little things, especially after you've been through so much. So yes, he starts with a bit of stories from his childhood. So yes, he managed to graduate from high school in the bottom half of his class. So Scott Kelly wasn't quite the brilliant student ever, but it's not necessarily the good grades that make you successful. So yes, he says about a book, The Right Stuff, that made him really want to become what he managed to become. So he says that he felt since he was a child. What I craved about the ambulance was the excitement, the difficulty, the unknown, the risk. Here in a book, I found something I thought I would never find, an ambition. I closed the book late that night, a different person. So this shows how reading a simple book can really transform a child's life. Yeah, it's quite interesting. So on 20th of February 2015, he talks about his trip to Russia, that they depended on the Russians to launch them into space, and he went to Star City, Russia. So the Star City is the Russian equivalent of the Johnson Space Center. It's a place where cosmonauts have been trained for the last 50 years. So yeah, quite a lot. So it's a town with its own mayor and a church, museums and apartment blocks, and with a giant statue of Yuri Gagarin, who became the first human in space. So yeah, from Star City they flew to Baikonur, So yes, in the middle of nowhere. Actually, Russia has a lot of places that are probably like in the middle of nowhere. So yes, so he talks about his interaction with other Russian people there, and yes, about Misha, his fellow traveler for a year, Gennady. So yeah, actually it was quite interesting to see how an American cosmonaut has its interactions with the Russian ones, and they all put different nations put their common effort into exploring space. So that was fine, interesting. So the Russians sometimes seem to care more about tradition than they do about appearance or function. This launch pad, which they call Gagarinsky Start, Gagarin's launch pad, is imbued with the success of the past, and they have no plans to replace it. So the Russians also had some old stuff, like it's a pad from which they left and they never changed it, the Russians, just because it was so filled with history. So yeah, like emotional attachment at its ultimate level. So he says that the physical problems from being so much into space. So Scott Kelly is actually in the record book for spending a year in the space. So he says that on his last flight to the space station, a mission of 159 days, he lost bone mass, his muscle atrophied, his blood redistributed to his body, which strained and shrank the walls of my heart. So traveling into space is not such a cool thing from a health perspective. Actually, it's kind of difficult to be in the middle of a void. So yeah, I experienced problems with my vision, as many other astronauts have. I have been exposed to more than 30 times the radiation of a person on Earth, equivalent to about 10 chest x-rays every day. This exposure will increase my risk of a fatal cancer for the rest of my life. None of this compares to the most troubling risk, that something bad could happen to someone I love while I'm in space with no way for me to coming home. So I think this was the most stressful thing for almost everybody from the space mission, thinking that something bad could happen to somebody back home, and it's not like you can like press 112 and go from space and come into the on Earth and solve the problem. So it's far more complicated, quite a lot of pressure. So yes, and he talks about the Russians and their eating habits, and how Dale, he was annoyed by one of the members that was always eating dill, and he says that it's because the Russian diet consists mostly of potatoes, cabbage, and vodka, and dill gets rid of farts. So quite funny. So Scott Kelly says that later he googled it, and it's true. So he says that getting rid of gas is a worthwhile goal before being sealed into a small tin can together for many hours. So he stopped complaining about the Russians eating their dill. Quite funny. So yes, he talks about this thing of United Nations, Russians and Americans, for the purpose of exploring space. He says that what is it worth to see former enemy nations turn their warriors into crewmates and lifelong friends? This is impossible to put a dollar figure on, but to me, it's one of the things that makes this project worth the expense, even worth risking our lives. So yeah, very very interesting. Um, so the International Space Station got its start in 1984, and it's the longest inhabited structure in space, and it has been visited by more than 200 people from 16 nations. So very very interesting. The space station has a lot of stories. So Scott Kelly talks about his preparation before everything. He's taking a long shower. He's thinking that he won't be having this luxury in space, that he will miss the feeling of water for the next year. So, yes, not quite religious, but he says that when you're getting ready to be rocketed into space, a blessing can't hurt. So yeah, it's difficult. It's not easy going into space. It's a scary, scary thing. So yes. Um, so I didn't know this, but it really takes like not necessarily the charm, the fun of going into space, but astronauts get diapers on them before going into space. I couldn't believe it when I read this. So, first, Gennady is called into a decent room to strip down and put on his diaper, cardiac electrodes, and a fresh pair of white long underwear, meant to absorb sweat and shield us from the rubber of the so-called suit. So, Misha goes into diaper up too, then I go. Whenever I do this, I chuckle to myself that I wouldn't have thought I'd be in diapers again until much later in life. So, yes, quite funny what people do for going into space. Actually, it's because of the speed of which with the rocket launches is that accidents could happen. So, it's better to be safe than sorry. So that's why they are into diapers when the cosmonauts. Yeah, so all that suit, all that fancy suit, all of that underneath, it's a diaper. So yeah, funny thing. So he talks about his partner, his second future to be wife, Amiko. Amiko was an acquaintance for a long time. She worked closely with my brother on a project and shared mutual friends with my ex-wife Leslie. It's quite interesting that Scott Kelly not only talks about space, but he also gives us little clues about his personal life, which I found it to be quite interesting. It's one thing to read a story from space, like technical details and everything, but one thing to also, I don't know, scoop in personal life a little. So I found it quite interesting. He talks about his ex-wife, his divorce, his new relationship with Amiko, and interesting thing, and we'll get there. He talks about the hardships of maintaining a relationship while being into space. Long distance relationship on another level. I mean, you are on Earth and your boyfriend is in space. So, yes, it's actually, if you thought that long distance relationships are hard, wait to see if one of the partners is rocketed into space. So, yeah, quite interesting. So, in early 2009, Amiko and I both filed for divorce. And by coincidence, we ran into each other a few times many months later. So yes, actually they were both married. They both divorced after a long time, and yes, we were both surprised to find that the separation only brought us closer. I could depend on her as my partner on the ground. So she was working on the station on the ground. So I think this helped them a lot. Working in the same domain, being colleagues somehow. A lot of things are being platonic between co-workers up until something happens, and yeah, interesting. So yes, I could depend on her as my partner on the ground, and we enjoyed being able to give each other our undivided attention for the hour or so a day we could talk on the phone. I came back more confident than ever that we belonged together. So, long distance relationship and separation brought them together. So, I know some of our friends wonder why we haven't gotten married. We've been together now for 5.5 years and have lived together for much of that time. So we are as committed as the married couple, but because both of us have been married before, we don't seem to see the point in it. But they will get married after this. So yes. So he talks more about his preparations, the Russian preparations for them to go into space and everything. And another fun thing, he talks about a tradition of the Russians. Um, Interesting again. I mean, this book, when I've read it about space and cosmonauts and everything, really shifted my entire uh, perspective about it. I mean, I had this idea of fancy thing, like, but it's quite hilarious, and their traditions and everything, like the diaper thing. And now this, listen out. I don't really have to pee, but it's a tradition. When Yuri Gagarin was on his way to the launch pad for his historic first space flight, he asked to pull over right about here and peed on the right rear tire of the bus. Then he went to space and came back alive. So now we all must do the same. The tradition is so well respected that women space travelers bring a bottle of urine or water to splash on the tire rather than getting entirely out of their suits. So on the way to the rocket, they go onto a bus, and that bus has to be. I found it hilariously. I mean, superstitions, but apparently it's quite important for the astronauts to respect it. So yes. So he talks about his childhood, going to school, his parents. His father was an alcoholic, and sometimes he would take off drinking for long periods of times. So he remembers one time when he disappeared, leaving his mother and his brother and him with no food, no money. So yes. So he talks about his mother being upset. We didn't eat that weekend when he disappeared, and I'll never forget how that feels. It affects me to this day when I hear of people who don't have enough to eat. The physical feeling of hunger is horrible, but much worse is the bottomlessness of not knowing when it will end. So he didn't have a, he didn't have an easy childhood. Sorry, this is so difficult streaming from my phone, and I have to like adjust this at the best of my possibilities. Yes, something like this. So yes, it's quite horrible to have a bad parent or somebody quite irresponsible. So Scott Kelly didn't have an easy childhood, and I think that helped him be really determined about his future path in life. So yes, hungry kids. Not see, my phone is keep on doing this. Okay. So yeah, not an easy thing. An alcoholic father. So yeah, he talks about his father also driving drunk, and sometimes my father's cop friends would come over to our house for parties, and they got drunk. They would pull their guns out. So one of his artworks from school got blasted by his father's. Really bad childhood. I mean, poor Scott Kelly. By the time I was a teenager, I had started trying to intervene in the violence between my parents. I never actually saw my father hit my mother, but I knew he did from the bruises I sometimes saw. So he talks really. I didn't expect it, like when I saw Scott Kelly, such a respected astronaut and such a a really smart person, and really he had a tough childhood. So yes, the stories. I think the most successful people have quite hard life stories. So he is like he had his father drunk, like with a gun in his mouth, saying he's gonna kill himself, and he is surprised that his father survived those years. And he said that sometimes I think if my father hadn't been a police officer, so his father was a police officer with this behavior, imagine, he would have been like a criminal or something like that. So yes, so he says that some people seem to need conflict, thrive on it, and create conflict everywhere they go. I've heard it said that the children of conflict seekers are raised to have the emotional control their parents lack, and then some that fighters are raised peacemakers. So actually, Scott Kelly, with such a troubled childhood, I think it's true, because I think that if you're a child and you see so much trauma in your parents' life, you really aspire not to become like one of your parents, especially like your dad. So that's quite interesting in this book, Scott Kelly being quite sincere, and he's revealing a lot of things. He says about parents, about his school. My memories of school are largely of being trapped in a classroom, bored out of my mind, and always wondering what was going outside. He ignored his teachers and daydreamed. I didn't know what I wanted to do, just that it would be exceptional, and I was pretty sure it had nothing to do with history, grammar, or algebra. So yeah, Scott Kelly wasn't so much of a good student. He wasn't. That's the problem. There are a lot of smart kids, but teachers don't see their potential. So yes. So his grandmother, his parents asked their maternal grandmother to help him. So after his grandmother worked with me for a few days, she gave up and declared me hopeless. If I was a kid now, I imagine I would be diagnosed with ADHD. So, but back then I was just a bad student. So yes, he had problems with focusing, and his problem was not his intelligence. He was just ADHD, but people saw him as incapable and hopeless. Quite sad that a lot of kids in schools are not being recognized for what they really are. So yes, so this book, The Right Stuff, really changed his life. So yes, he worked on an ambulance. He wanted to be a naval aviator. I was still a directionless, undereducated 18-year-old with terrible grades who knew nothing about about airplanes, but the right stuff had given me the outline of a life plan. So this book really, like, he felt like I had found my calling. So reading a book is quite a powerful thing for a child, for a teenager. So yes, he talks now about, this is quite a technical book. He talks about a lot of details from the ship, like the section of the Soyuz spacecraft. This is like a little image. A lot of technical details. So yeah, we contemplate the prospect of coming back to Earth. How ridiculous we'll feel climbing out of this capsule, saying hello again to people we've just said the biggest goodbye in the world to. They were like concerned, what if the launch would fail, and they would like be so excited, oh, we're launching into space, and something bad happens and they have to climb down on Earth. So they were thinking they would look ridiculous. So how, the eternal question I had, how does space smell? So he describes, I smell something strangely familiar and unmistakable, a strong burned metal smell, like the smell of sparklers on the 4th of July. Objects that have been exposed to the vacuum of space have this unique smell on them, like the smell of welding, the smell of space. So actually, when we see all those colorful pictures with stars and Milky Way and everything, we might imagine a cute smell, but actually it's the burn of metal, the smell of burned metal. So he talks about his crew. So each of my crew mates is not only a close co-worker, but also a roommate and a surrogate for all humanity. He talks about Samantha, oh my god, sorry, my phone just fell. So that's, sorry. So this is like, see, making Twitch from your phone can really be quite a lot of troubles. So sorry, guys. So yeah, I can't. My laptop is so broken, and until I'll get it fixed, I'll have to make the best of what I can have. So sorry. I hope this will. Let me make sure it's quite stable now. But yeah, okay. I think it's good. I hope. So this is quite an adventure. So yeah, he talks about Samantha Cristoforetti. She's the first Italian woman to fly in space, and soon she'll be the record holder for the longest single space flight by a woman. So women in space, actually, yeah, quite interesting. So he talks about his emotions, that when he was like almost close to leaving Earth, I felt a shiver of realization. I'm going to be up there near for a year. What exactly have I gotten myself into? It occurs to me for a moment that this might be one of the stupider things I've ever done. So yes, the emotions, the worries. So he talks about things that will be difficult in space, especially sleeping. Sleeping while floating isn't easy, especially when you're out of practice. Even though my eyes are closed, cosmic flashes occasionally light up my field of vision, the result of radiation striking my retinas, creating the illusion of light. So yeah, quite difficult to sleep floating and everything. So he alternates, this book alternates between Scott Kelly actual experience in space and Scott Kelly stories about his university, he's going to school, he's getting married, his conflicts with his wife. So this is like a duality. It's like sometimes he gets back to the story with him being in space, sometimes he gets back in past remembering things. So yeah, interesting. So he talks about his university at UMBC. He was he only got in B's, but he decided to learn something hard, and he really learned it. He wanted to transfer to other schools, Rutgers University and the State University of New York College. So he was rejected. He was rejected by Rutgers. So when the letter came in the mail, my parents had opened it and thrown it away without telling me. They couldn't bear to disappoint me. They kept this secret for years, until long after I've been selected as an astronaut. Funny thing. So I wonder if he had knew that he got rejected, if it would have affected him, but thanks God he didn't, because he persevered. And yeah, so imagine, like, you'd think that an astronaut, I think the guys, because I'm streaming from my phone, and I have it like on a thing, it will keep on moving and do crazy things. So just expect this not to be a regular stream, because it's quite okay. I'm trying not to make sudden moves so my phone wouldn't just drop. So yes, sorry. So interesting thing about Scott Kelly, being like, a lot of people would assume that a huge astronaut probably was so good at everything, but not, he got rejected and everything. So yes, he says that the military discipline came pretty easily for me. I think I have been craving for that kind of structure, and it was almost a relief to be told what to do and how to do it. Schoolwork was still hard for me, but following directions gave me stability. I embraced it. So yes, he was on the SUNY Maritime campus. So he needed a lot of discipline, and he needed that. So interesting. Yeah. He decided to try to know everything. He was so motivated. He was like, he started to enjoy the challenge of school. So quite a shift from sitting, do you remember, from sitting in the back of the class and feeling rejected and with no interest. Later in life in university, he enjoyed the challenge of school. So people change. So he started to be like on the cruise, the summer between my sophomore and junior years, on Empire State 5. He was like, yeah, interesting. He was also on the sea, so yes. Interesting thing. My goal, Scott Kelly says, my goal for most of my adult life has been to pilot aircraft and spacecraft. So it sometimes strikes me as odd that the International Space Station doesn't need to be piloted at all. When I try to explain this to people who don't know much about the station, I tell them it's more like a ship traveling the world's ocean than like an airplane. What a beautiful metaphor, a ship traveling like the world's oceans. Like, yeah, interesting. So this is like a little image. My crew quarters on board of the ISS, a place to sleep, but also my personal private space. So this is how it looked like. Quite small, little thing. So yeah, limited space. So he talks about their the experience on space, that it's hard to explain to people who haven't lived here how much we start to miss nature. In the future, there will be a word for the specific kind of nostalgia we feel for living things. We all like to listen to recordings of nature, rainforest, bird calls, wind in the trees. Misha, one of his Russian colleagues, has even a recording of mosquitoes, which I think goes a bit too far. So, yes, as sterile and lifeless as everything is up here, we do have windows that give us a fantastic view of Earth. So quite interesting. This is a picture of him looking on the cupola of the ISS. So yes, you miss Earth and you miss living things. Although space is quite fabulous, yeah. He talks about fruits and vegetables on space seem to rot faster here than on Earth. I'm not sure why, and seeing the process makes me worry that the same thing is happening to my own cells. So yes, the human body degrades in space, a lot of radiation. So this is the point where he mentions the previous book I've been talking about, Alfred Lansing, The Incredible Voyage of Shackletons. So this book inspired me to read the book of Alfred Lansing. So this is quite interesting. Again, he turns to a book to change his perspective. He says that when if I'm inclined to feel sorry for myself because I miss my family, or because I had a frustrating day, or because the isolation is getting to me, reading a few pages about the Shackleton expedition reminds me that even if I have it hard up here in some ways, I'm certainly not going through what they did. So the Shackletons' experience is practical people being trapped in the Antarctic Sea, and their ship sank, and quite difficult. So yeah, this inspired me to read another book. So from book to book to book to book. So yeah. So he talks a lot of details about ships, about the difficulties, about Samantha Cristoforetti, that is going to operate the robot arm from the robotics workstation. So yeah, quite interesting. He talks about what kind of movies they're watching, what they're doing, their relationship. So they're still learning about the long-term effects of breathing so much CO2. It may cause cardiovascular problems. So they are also monitoring their own health in order to see which are the effects of space over the human body. So yes. So he says that if we're going to get to Mars, we are going to need a much better way to deal with CO2. So they're also not only being in space, but they're doing research. They try to monitor a lot of things and to see how that works. So yeah, quite interesting. So the relationships between themselves, and I think also on not only in space but also on Earth, the relationship that you have with your coworkers. Working with the right person can make the toughest day go well, and working with the wrong person can make the simplest task excruciatingly difficult. So yes, depending on who is up there with me, my year in space could be needlessly perilous, fraught with conflict, or saturated with the everyday annoyance of a person you can't quite click with and also can't get away from. So he says he's very lucky that he had nice people with him all the time. He talks about the music he listened, U2, Coldplay, Bruce Springsteen. The Russians especially like Depeche Mode. I'm a Depeche Mode fan, so I get that. So Pink Floyd, Grateful Dead, Jay-Z and Eminem. So their music also reached space. Quite an interesting thing. So yes. He also comes back to his relationship with Amiko, and he says that this year in space is a test of endurance for Amiko as well, and it's important for me to remember that. So yes, it's difficult. It's difficult to have a long distance relationship when the other person is on Earth and the other person is in space. So yes, it was quite difficult for them. So he talks about some little things that it was like an anniversary. His mother died, and Amiko went to put some flowers on my mother's grave today and took a picture to include in the email. Most of all, I'm moved by Amiko's gesture. She has a lot to deal with on the weekends, but she remembered this date and drove out to the cemetery to do this because I couldn't. So yes, so Amika was with me at the end of my mother's life. She was with me when I learned I would be going on this mission. She knows more than anyone but my brother what it would mean to my mother to see what I'm doing now. So yes, the importance of having the right partner, the importance of having someone that truly gets you and someone that does these little things. Imagine how much it meant for him, stuck in space, in the middle of nowhere. Actually, not. It's in the middle of space. And how much it meant for him to see such a loving gesture from his girlfriend. So these little things really brought them together even more. You would imagine that if somebody goes away, their relationship would deteriorate, and but a lot of people don't get along in their same houses and they hate each other. And someone who has like a long distance period, like this for a year, he was away from his girlfriend for a year, but they talked daily on the phone, or they scheduled video calls or something like that. But you see, like it's not about the physical presence of the other, it's also about the mental presence of the other and the emotional things. Really beautiful said in this book. So distance will not always be a thing to break people apart. For some people it can be even a more of a bonding experience. So I love this little confession of Scott Kelly in the book. Really, really nice. So yes, again, if you like a lot of details and science, this is the book for you. It has a lot of details from the space, from the ships, from everything, how it works. So yes, so he says like a thing that it sounds strange, but seeing the risk involved into going into space made the prospect of flying in space even more appealing. So Scott Kelly has this thing that he has like a rush for adrenaline, and he loves the thing that the space is putting him up to. So yeah, quite interesting. He says about earning his first salary. He talks about his life on Earth too. So yes, it like he talks that he walked around town feeling like a rock star, spent a lot of the salary in bars. So he wasn't always very committed and very good. So yeah. So a couple of pictures in the book. A couple of pictures with the International Space Station with its solar panels, him and his brother, and his father, which is holding the Bible, as my mother is sworn as the first female police officer. So yeah, quite interesting, as you can see. Very interesting. So yeah, so again, other pictures. The lifting off in Discovery, a picture with them. So my astronaut class photo. That looks interesting. So yeah, on my first mission to space, we repaired the Hubble Space Telescope. Right here, another picture. So a lot of pictures from space. Yeah, quite interesting. His daughter Samantha and Charlotte in Red Square, Moscow. Here, this is his partner Amiko. She's quite beautiful in space. Gennady and Misha. These are his Russian friends. So yeah, very interesting. The Soyuz and the Russian Orthodox priest blessing the Soyuz. Quite interesting. So yes, so interesting thing. I've noticed a strange phenomenon when people watch movies in space. We instinctually move to a position that looks like lying down with relation to the screen. So yes. So he talks that he wrapped up things for his crewmates, especially thinking about Samantha's 38th birthday. He had some chocolate wrapped up nicely. So he talks about how they try to make everything be very efficient on the ship, especially with fresh water, and yeah, a lot of details of coping with living. He talks about his conferences with his girlfriend, that he can see Amiko sitting on her sofa. They talk about how each of their days have gone and everything. So yes. They also talk about a lot of things like docking and fixing things that got broken on the ship. So yes, they talk about his fear of dying. So something like that. So yeah, so it occurs to me one day we're all going to be dead, that we will all be dead much longer than we were alive. So he became self-aware, realizing that we're alive, and the nothingness before that wasn't particularly objectionable. So yeah, this thought scaring him made him to wake up and write an email to his girlfriend. So yeah, he experienced a lot of things in space: fear, excitement, joy, yes, and yeah. So he talks about having vision problems or headaches because of the fact that the cerebral fluid does not drain properly and tends to increase the pressure in our heads. So yes, it's quite difficult. The health issues from being so much into space are not to be ignored. So yeah. So in the fluid shift study, Misha and I will be subjects in an experiment that uses a device for relieving the intracranial pressure of spaceflight. So they also made like little experiments on themselves and reporting them back to Earth to see. And this experimental thing was pants that suck. This is not a metaphor. We will take turns donning a device roughly the shape of a pair of pants called kibis, Russian for lapwing, a type of bird, that reduces the pressure on the lower half of our bodies. So the pants look a lot like the bottom half of the robot from Lost in Space. So yes, they were even ready to wear weird pants to release them from that pressure. So they talk about their cravings. They craved a lot fresh fruits, fresh vegetables. They rarely could be able to have them. So talk about their internet connection. So yes, he talks about the lessons learned in space. There is a lesson here, I guess, about risk and resilience, about endurance and trying again. So they had a lot of issues on the station, they had to work on them, they didn't always succeed. It takes a lot of mental power to be an astronaut and everything. Yes, he gets back to his life and he talks about his life on Earth, so he alternates. He talks about in the spring of 1988, he moved to Texas to begin flying a twin-engine jet T2 Buckeye. So he learned how to pilot a lot of things. Yeah, quite interesting. Landing. He advanced. He started flying even more advanced things like A4, Skyhawk, an attack jet from the Vietnam. So, and he managed his greatest victory. He was to fly the greatest Navy fighter plane ever, the F-14 Tomcat. So yes, quite interesting. So from a little boy in school having ADHD and not being able to focus, look what he accomplished. So finding your passion, finding the things that really motivate you to go further and further. So yes, so he talks also about the pressure that a lot of people that were like at his age were already married with kids, and at the Navy. In the Navy, interesting, in the Navy at that time there was an idea that a single officer generally didn't advance as quickly as a married one. Oh my god! This wasn't a written rule, maybe it was even nonsense, but everyone believed it. Being a family man was supposedly an indicator of a certain kind of stability and maturity. So, he asked Leslie to marry me over a bottle of wine sitting on a park bench on the edge of the Chesapeake Bay, and she said yes. That was his first wife, Leslie. So he dated her regularly for most of that year. So yes, but he says an interesting thing, that when he was actually in front of the fact, like he didn't feel it right. He didn't feel it was right. So I think he got married with his first wife just because he wanted to be in the Navy so bad, and he didn't quite like, he didn't feel that thing, and I think that took to the divorce so many years later. So yes, quite sad. So he mentions it here. All of a sudden, as I was knotting my tie, my phone, I realized I didn't want to get married. I cared for Leslie and I enjoyed her company. But if I was being honest with myself, I wasn't getting married. I wasn't marrying her because I had been moved to in my heart. Oh, without being aware of it, I had created a Navy event rather than a wedding. I felt I had no choice but to go through with it. I wasn't going to disappoint Leslie and her family or my own family. Somehow, it didn't feel like a permanent mistake I was making. I was only 28. I would try to make this work, but if I couldn't, I figured I could get divorced. So, oh, my phone is moving again. So, interesting thing again, that he didn't feel that he wanted to get married. He didn't feel this. So interesting that I think it was quite predictable. So sorry. I think it was quite predictable that this marriage won't going to last, but it lasted quite a lot. But I think that we all crave like for genuine connection and love, and to get married for the right reasons, not just because you have to be accepted in the Navy. So yes, he didn't like, he loved her, but not in that way to be truly wanting to get your your knots tied. So yes, unfortunate. So he talks about the birth of Samantha, his daughter, on 1994. Leslie had become more fragile and sensitive during her pregnancy, but once Samantha was born, Leslie's life revolved around her. As a mother, she was doting and full of praise. Samantha was a jolly kid, outgoing and infectiously happy. So yes, married life. So he comes back to his thing on space. So from his he's like pulling out memories from his mind, putting them on the book, and then he goes back to him being in space. So he says that he was now in space, and he finds an email from my ex-wife Leslie, which is unusual. So Leslie email makes me feel both closer to Earth and farther away at the same time. It nearly brings a tear to my eye. So yes, he was thinking about the thing that sometimes I reflect that future generations may live their whole lives in space, and they won't need their bones at all. They will be able to live as intervertebrates. So yeah, but I plan to return to Earth, so I must work out 6 days a week. So yeah, it's quite difficult that being in space like really affects your muscle toning and everything. So they really had to really work out and make it work, because if they wouldn't, they will like turn into mush. So yes, he talks about a little incident on the ship, like, we are privatizing. These are words that make any astronaut blood freeze. They mean something bad has happened. So error, something not working, they always got a lot of agitation from that. So yes, so they almost were very close to clash with the satellite, and the Russian approach to danger. The Russian approach is to say fuck it and spend what might be their last 20 minutes having lunch. So Russians are like in front of that, like, okay, we don't care anymore. Let's just have lunch, because if we're going to die, we're going to die anyway. At least let's die. Let's not die hungry. So yes. In that time, he says that only 4 other times in 15 years have crews had to shelter in place as we are now. So yeah, they were preparing for the worst. So, but they managed to be okay. So again, he goes back to his life on Earth and the task that he has to go through. So he talks about an interesting experience that he that he was like on Twitter and he got trolled by somebody, that it's like it's no big deal that he went into space because somebody else went onto the moon. And it's like it's not nice to be trolled. And yeah, but well, so that happened when he was like on a conversation with President Obama. So he realized that when the Twitter chat is over, I have the chance to reflect that I just experienced being trolled in space by the second man on the moon while also engaging in a Twitter conversation with the president. So it was one of those guys that went to the moon that trolled Scott Kelly on Twitter that, okay, you've been in space, but that's not a big deal. Yeah, not nice. I thought that science people are being nicer between themselves, but apparently even smart people can be trolls. So again, a lot of details about tests, about, I don't know, yeah. So he was once it was a lot of anxiety for this medical test and for like going on the selection board and everything. It's quite difficult to be an astronaut. Like when you read all of this, you can imagine the thing that you have to go through. So yes, a lot of things. He talks about the selection for NASA, and he talks about the time that he actually found out he was selected, when he told his wife, I'm going to be an astronaut. She was very thrilled. And also his twin brother. So yeah. So when the press found out that NASA had selected the two of us, so him and his twin brother, they called the astronaut selection office to ask about it. A reporter asked Dwayne Ross, did you know you picked two brothers? His answer, no. We picked two very accomplished test pilots who happened to be twins. So, lucky thing. So, he says how hard it was for him to also cope with family life, with being selected in NASA, in running every day. So, yeah, a lot of things. So he moved out in Houston with his wife and his daughter. He had to do like ASCAN training to learn how to fly the shuttle training aircraft. So a lot of work to be an astronaut. So yes, he talks about the Hubble Space Telescope that has been making observations of the universe since 1990. Until then, astronomers could never get a truly clear view of the night sky because of the distorting effect of the atmosphere, the same effect that causes stars to appear to twinkle. So that's why stars twinkle. Yeah, it's the distorting effect of the atmosphere. Fun fact. So yes, he was doing a lot of simulations. So running simulated missions is the only way for astronauts to get hundreds of hours of experience doing something that in reality we could get to do only a few minutes. So the simulations recreated the experience as closely as possible. Same screens, switches, buttons, same uncomfortable metal framed seats, headsets, and same thick procedure books. So simulations, yeah, if you want to see how it's like to become an astronaut, how everything, the simulation, the details are all in here. So Scott Kelly really makes a good job at describing everything. He talks about also women in this area, like Aileen Collins, the first woman to command a space shuttle mission on Columbia in 1999. So yeah, women are also a part of NASA's reach to space. So yeah. So yes, so I had been told that the astronauts flying in the space shuttle had a risk of death similar to that of Allied infantrymen on D-Day. So yeah. Mm. So the risk of dying. So here is a picture with a rendering of the space shuttle cockpit. So again, this book is also filled with a lot of technical details. Yeah. So if you're a fan of technical details of space, yeah. So Scott Kelly talks about a very interesting thing, a phenomena called space brain. Space brain is a term for losing focus in space. One thing that surprised him in living in space that it was very hard to keep his focus, and he had that all astronauts experience some level of difficulty concentrating on a short mission, what we call space brain. So yeah, not easy, not easy. So even if we judge very harsh, like so many money put into science and those people are just sitting in a space and floating. No, look at that, it's so difficult, and all the things that you get in your body happening, and the pressure, the everything, it's so yes. So he describes how being different nations on the space station made them eat different foods. Like on Sunday we have a traditional Kazakh meal, irradiated and packaged into space food, serving horse meat soup, cheese made of horse milk, and horse milk to drink. Yeah. So yeah. So they have to give themselves flu shots to be safe from infectious illness up here. So it's also part of the study. NASA tried to study how Scott's body and Mark's body, his brother, behaved in space. So a lot of research work as well. So a thing that Scott Kelly also found out that sometimes it's the more mundane aspects of life in space that capture the public's attention the most. So I think a lot of people were curious, like, how do you wash in space? How do you eat? What do you do if something spills? Yeah, so yeah. So again, he talks about his moving to Russia. So after he managed to be selected by NASA and everything, he had to do his training in Russia. So Leslie and Samantha come to join me in Russia for the summer. So difficult. It's difficult to have a marriage and for your husband to be always moving, always on the road, always training. It wasn't easy for anybody. So also on the spaceship, toilet paper was forbidden. It clogged up the sanitation system. We were told instead to use a brush soaking in an antiseptic next to the toilet. Community ass brush. I thought to myself, shit. So yeah, the reality of being an astronaut on a spaceship, it's not fancy, it's not nice, it's not it actually I think this kind of conditions test you if you really want it. If you really want it, you have to be really ready. Yeah. So he talks about the things that went wrong also with Columbia ship that unfortunately was a failure. So yeah. So after the Columbia ship failed, they'd recover thousands of fragments of it, and every piece would help us figure out what had gone wrong. So yes, I can honestly say the Columbia accident never for a second made me think about quitting. But my colleague's death gave me a renewed sense that my daughter could have grown up without a parent, just as the Columbia cruise kids have done. So yeah, when you want to become an astronaut and explore space and you see a ship like exploding and people dying, it really makes you reconsider things on another level. So he talks about October 2003 when Leslie gave birth to our second child, Charlotte. So yeah, Charlotte was delivered by C-section. She had no heartbeat, wasn't breathing. So he was so shocked by that he had to leave the operating room. So yes, yeah, interesting. Yeah, being a parent, seeing a lot of things, but also wanting. He was like also a career guy, but also a family guy. And yes, but quite difficult. So again, a lot of technical details. That's why I'm going through these pages, because it's a lot of technical details about ships, about his conversations with his co-workers. So he talks about 2008, that he started training for my mission to the space station in earnest. I would be launching with two Russians, Sasha Kaleri and Oleg Skripochka. So yes. So also with he had to train with the Japanese space agency. He traveled to Tsukuba, a city of about 200,000, located about 50 miles northeast of Tokyo. So I think this affected his family life quite a lot. His traveling, he always had to go somewhere, be somewhere, train somewhere, do something. Quite difficult. So he talks about it. As with most marriages that begin with the groom thinking about how to get out of the ceremony, which he did, my marriage to Leslie was not a happy one. Leslie was a good mother, and she continued to take care of things on the home front, so I was free to work demanding hours at NASA, including frequent travel. After Samantha was born, I periodically tried to initiate conversations about our relationship and the possibility of ending our marriage. These conversations never went well. Our talks always ended with Leslie saying that if I ever tried to leave her, she would destroy my career and I would never see my child again. I was shocked and saddened that she would threaten me this way, but I also understood that emotions were running high and we all had a lot at stake. So yes, quite difficult to have a marriage that you no longer want to be in anymore. So we decided to try counseling. I was reluctant at first because I thought it might affect my chances to fly in space. I had been asked in the process of interviewing with NASA whether I had ever sought counseling or psychiatric help. And having truthfully said no, I didn't want that to change. So yes, the counselor wasn't able to help us much. Our marriage continued to deteriorate. So after Charlotte was born and child changed to children, the stakes were even higher. So quite sad for me to read this, but interesting confessions from a top world astronaut. So we settled into a semi-friendly arrangement in which she took care of our children and home, and I pursued my career. I was gone a lot, which minimized the opportunities for tension and fighting, and we both liked entertaining and having people around. So even when I was home, there wasn't much chance for serious drama. We continued this way for years. Quite sad in a way. It's like It's what I think a lot of therapists call the invisible divorce. Like you are still married, but you're no longer emotionally connected to that person. So yes, quite sad. Uh, I don't know if somebody has written me because I cannot see my chat on this. So if you by the chance have written me anything, I wasn't able to see it. So sorry. Um, so he decided like that he wanted a divorce. So yeah, he was thinking that what if this this life that he has with his wife, is that everything that it is? Like will he, like his marriage will be like this for 30-40 years from now? Because if that's the case, that will be let me that would be like quite sad. um oh, you've written me, I'm so sorry, I didn't see my chat. Good morning, morning. Okay. um Hello. Yes, he talks about his experience. He talks about his experience, his first year in space. So now I can see the chat. So now you can write me. Sorry, guys, streaming from my phone is quite difficult, but yeah, I'm trying to make it work the best that I can, and yeah. Okay. La 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 la. Okay. So yeah, so after that he decided he really wants a divorce, and that he could no longer support like his marriage with this woman. Well, it was quite predictable, like when he wanted to get married with his first wife, even like instantly he thought about how could be able to escape the wedding. So that was a clear indicator that uh, it wasn't meant to be. But well, children, um, a lot of responsibilities. So he talks that I'd hoped to have an amicable split for the benefit of our daughters. So Samantha was 14, Charlotte was 5. This was not to be. Yeah. So interesting. Yes. Hey Ram. Yes, it's really a great book. So Scott Kelly actually talks about his personal life as well, and after he filed for divorce from his wife, and he says that when I put my head on the pillow that night, I felt more at peace than I had in months, maybe years. Maybe I would never fly in space again, but I was going to try to live a life I wouldn't regret when I was old. So actually, he was afraid that if he would be getting a divorce, that it would affect his career at NASA, but actually the prospects of him living a 20-40 year marriage, unhappy marriage, consumed him so much that he would prefer to just, yeah, it's sad, but it shows that astronauts, great people, can go through bad relationships. And yeah, so his Leslie carried out one of her threats by moving away with the children, but in the end, our divorce didn't affect my career as I feared it might. She is still angry at me for ending our marriage. So yeah, when he started to see Amiko, his girlfriend, Leslie was surprisingly warm towards her. So whatever animosity she continued to feel toward me, she didn't extend to Amiko, which a lot of people might have done in her situation. So yeah. So yeah, Leslie had been an important part of my life. I wish we could be on better terms. I have never regretted my decision to marry her, and I am eternally grateful for Samantha and Charlotte. Yes, it's quite difficult. I don't know. I even said, like, in the first part of the book, it's quite a thick book. I'm almost at the end. But it's imaginably hard for a human to become an astronaut, exactly because a lot of training, a lot of testing, a lot of pressure, a lot of things. So you have to be quite, you really have to want it. You have to be hungry. You have to be dedicated. So otherwise it wouldn't work. So yes. So this is like a few of the pictures. I wouldn't like to become an astronaut, but I would love to travel into space. So yeah, traveling into space, that I would like. Astronaut I wouldn't know, because I think is like the thing is that for longer you are sitting in space, for longer your body is affected. I'm not sure mentally I would be strong enough, but it's like I don't, it's not something I truly want so much, to become an astronaut. Yes, traveling in space is almost there. So a couple of images from space. Look, this is like the blue water of Bahamas, supposedly seen from space, them trying to fix things. The Soyuz spacecraft lifts off here. So this is the station robotic arm, this one. So a lot of pictures from space, really interesting, like playing with oranges, seeing hurricane, the aurora. Really, I love this image with the aurora in space. Really nice. Oh, but this one out tops it, the Milky Way. Look, so for this I would become an astronaut to be able to see everything. Like, look, the New York seen from space, quite interesting. This is the image of the pollution. Yes, these are pictures from the International Space Station. Yeah, here you can see the pollution from the Indian subcontinent. Yeah, this is how the sunrise looks from the space station. Quite interesting, isn't it? But yes, this is my favorite image. This is the Milky Way. Yes. So beautiful. So I think this kind of images made them really well. So this is his twin brother, Mark, and this is like when they came back to Earth. No, what's that all about? I'd love to know more if you do. Yeah, the twins. Tell me more. I found space thing quite interesting. So, okay, I Google it. Laniak, yeah, but it's quite impossible for me now because I'm streaming from my phone, but I will remember it and Google it. Um, I'm having difficulties with my laptop. It got broken, and I have to I felt the need to talk about this book. So I'm streaming from my phone. It's quite my phone wouldn't take streaming and googling and things in the same time. But I will remember Laniakea and I will do my research. So the US spacesuits include simple propulsive jets we could use to maneuver ourselves in space in case our tether breaks up or we screw up, but we would not want to rely on them and, truth be told, try them out at all. So, oh, it's the name of the supercluster. Oh, a supercluster of galaxies. Ooh, that's nice, quite nice. It's interesting thing, this space, isn't it? It's quite a lot of things. So he describes the first spacewalk was carried out in 1965 by cosmonaut Alexei Arkhipov Leonov. He opened the hatch of his Voskhod spacecraft, floated out on an umbilical, and reported to Moscow, "The Earth is absolutely round." So yeah. This is one. Yes, it's unreachable so bad. I would love to live long enough to be able to travel into space. It's one of my ultimate dreams, but this is one of my favorite quotes from the book. I'm going to read it. I absolutely loved how Scott Kelly has written this piece of literature, so I'm going to read it. "The color and brilliance of the planet, sprawling out in every direction, are startling. I've seen the Earth from spacecraft windows countless times now, but the difference between seeing the planet from inside a spacecraft through multiple layers of bulletproof glass and seeing it from out here is like the difference between seeing a mountain from a car window and climbing the peak. My face is almost pressed against the thin layer of my clear plastic visor, my peripheral vision seemingly expanding out in every direction. I take in the stunning blue, the texture of the clouds, the varied landscapes of the planet, the glowing atmosphere edging on the horizon, a delicate sliver that makes all life on Earth possible. There is nothing but the black vacuum of the cosmos beyond. I want to say something about it to Kjell, but nothing I can think of sounds right." So yes, he was in such an awe of this thing, and yeah, space, it's really impressing even like the most experienced astronauts. And yes, so again, a lot of technical details of him trying to get the hatch securely closed and all kinds of small little tasks that appear necessary on that place. So yeah. So he talks about the Russians, that the Russians have a very different system for medically certifying people to fly. So when we travel in their Soyuz, we must abide by their rules. So yeah. So this is a nice image of how the yes, he explained, yes, with his mind. Yeah, exactly, he's such a visual person. I love that. And this is an image when they made the Soyuz seat liner and how they poured plaster. So a lot of sacrifice. He was staying here, Scott Kelly, and the Russians were like pouring plaster, and this is how the seat in the Soyuz got made. So a lot of sacrifices in order to but this is a tiny little thing compared to all the other things he had to went through. So yeah. So he talks about his launch experience. Yeah, like a baby chair. Exactly. Like a car, baby chair. So the launch experience was different from the shuttle. The Soyuz capsule was much smaller than the shuttle's cockpit and less advanced, so there was less for the crew to do. It was much more automated than the space shuttle was. So nothing could match the acceleration of the shuttle's solid rocket boosters pushing us away from the Earth with an instantaneous 7 million pounds of thrust at liftoff. But anytime you rocket off the planet, it's serious business. Yeah. So he talks that this was Amiko's first time seeing me launch into space. So Amiko is his girlfriend after he filed for divorce from his second wife. Amiko was actually one of the women that were working on the ground, and they knew each other for quite a long time. They were both married, they both got divorces, and after that they started dating. And yeah, interesting. I wouldn't know if I don't think she's Russian. I don't know. I actually don't know her nationality. He talks about her, but he doesn't go quite into the details about her. But she's very beautiful. He has a picture with her in the book. This is her. This is Amiko. Look. So yeah, she's quite beautiful and tall and nice. So actually he talks in the beginning of the book how this thing, like him being in space for a year, actually made them turn even closer to each other and really made their relationship bond, because a lot of couples break up in long distance, and I think that this is like the ultimate long distance thing. It's like one of them is on space and one of them is on Earth, so you can't get more long distance than this. So yes, so he talks about also they also had like in crew not everybody got along, and he said that it was quite dangerous for the mission itself if people couldn't get along. So it says about two of the crew members that had like arguments and everything, and he said that their lack of communication made their work harder and could have cost them their lives and potentially ours too in an emergency. So it was quite important for the people to get along. So he talks about Discovery. The crew of the Discovery mission did a few spacewalks, and one of them involved a Japanese payload called Message in a Bottle. It was an experiment, but simply a glass bottle that was opened at a certain point in the spacewalk to let space in. So once the glass bottle returned to Earth, it would be displayed in museums throughout Japan in order to raise children's interest in space flights. Yes, people getting along is quite difficult. I think it's an art, it's communication, and communication is hard. It's easier to have fights and be upset and be angry and be, I don't know, nasty. It's harder to actually get along. It's easier to be nasty. So yeah, so I found that thing with a message in a bottle, that they left a glass bottle and let space in, and then quite interesting. So yeah, education is quite important, and I think people, if they would read more books for couples, for personal growth, everything, they would have a better. But first you have to admit you have a problem in communicating, so that's hard to admit by default. So yeah, he talks about his surviving of the he had like a beginning of prostate cancer, and he got surgery for it, and in 2015 he talks that it has been like 9 years from that surgery. So he reflected on the fact that I have spent more than a year of my life in space after having been diagnosed with and treated for cancer. I don't think of myself as a cancer survivor, more like a person whose prostate gland had cancer, which was removed and disposed of. But I'm happy if my story is meaningful to others, especially kids, as an example that they can still achieve great things. Gracias! So yes. So he survived a lot of things, guys. A lot of things. From he talks about Mars as well, going to Mars, what that would imply. So actually going into space was also a good thing. Yeah, hablo un pico de español, mais no más. Un peu de French, de français, mais pas du tout. Like, English is the best language I can speak in. So yeah. No, Julio Ver, no. Eso es la historia de Scott Kelly, uno astronauta en el espacio, and and yeah, that's my Spanish. Yeah, I can't say anything more. So yeah, molto interessante. So yeah. So he talks about one of the crew members, Yuri, that was the only person who have gotten married while in space. On his first ISS mission in 2003, he and his bride Ekaterina exchanged vows via a video conference while her friends and family gathered around her home in Houston. So, knowing Yuri, I'm pretty sure he wasn't crazy about this idea, but he went along with it anyway. So, I was also reading a couple of news with people getting married through video conference now in quarantine. I was actually reading something like a couple from India or something, and I was like, okay, why didn't you do it previously? Like, did it take like a COVID thing to realize, oh, I want to spend the rest of my life with him so much that I really have to get married through a video conference? I don't know. But yeah, quite interesting. So yeah, you can get married in space as well. That would be something. So maybe if you file for divorce, maybe they wouldn't give it to you because it didn't happen on planet Earth. It happened in space. Yeah, let's get married. Oh God, I don't know. I think you have to somehow think about it. I don't know what's I'm not married. I don't know what's the secret of a happy marriage. If it's better to not think it through and okay, let's get married and see after, or if it's good to actually think about it. I don't know. I think it's a combination of those two. You have to think a little. You can't just get married with anyone. So yes, he talks about Christmas on 24th of December. That it's Christmas Eve and it's his third Eve in space. Yeah, it's a combination of good communication, chemistry, and I think the mind, you have to be mentally attracted because physical things go away, but if your mind is mush, that won't be attractive for long. So yes, so talking about relationships, he talks about one of the moments that him and his girlfriend Amiko had a little thing of a difficulty in their relationship. I'm gonna quote his confession. I get the sense that something has been bothering you, I say. Have I done something to upset you? She thinks for a moment, then gives a long sigh. She sounds exhausted. I feel like when you get back, we will have to reconnect, she says. Of course we will have to reconnect, I think. I have been away for a year. What does that mean? I ask. You feel disconnected? Amiko explains that the holidays are tough because she is missing not only me but my daughters. She is carrying a heavy load watching over my father and her own sons, taking care of our own house and the many things I can't be there to help her. So yes, lately many of our conversations revolve around things I need her to do to the exclusion of everything else. At times she can feel like my co-worker rather than my partner. Worse, she tells me it's starting to bother her that she no longer remembers how I feel or smell, what it's actually like to be with me face to face. She says she's craving a real human touch. So yeah, quite difficult. So he talks. I like that Scott Kelly is quite sincere. It's quite sincere. So yeah, he could live for many years. Depends on your health and everything. So yeah. He says that I have full confidence in our relationship and Amiko has been nothing but loyal and honest in the 6 years we've been together. But hearing the words reconnect and a real human touch feels simply awful. So yeah, Amiko is attractive and she would have no problem fulfilling any cravings for human contact she might have on Earth. So she wants something very simple and I can't give it to her. So he was quite frustrated knowing that your girlfriend, which is like gorgeous, is like on Earth and she craves a simple thing like human touch and you just can't give it to her. So yeah, that was quite difficult. So actually when they were having this conversation, they got disconnected. That was horrible. So he says that later I'm able to get Amika on the phone again and she tells me something she has never told me before. That because I continue to make an effort to make this year in space look easy, it can seem as though I don't miss her and don't need her. So we both take pride in being strong and making difficult things seem easy, but by keeping the strain to myself, I shut her out. I tell her that making it look easy is the only way I can convince myself I can do this, but in reality it isn't easy at all. So I can see how this would make her feel that she is somehow more alone in this than I am, and she is right. Uh, yeah, so yeah, it happens, but fortunately they were able to got through this together. So what does he do? So he got a slight argument with his girlfriend, and things weren't like smooth between them. What did he do in order to make her feel better? So I really love this little gesture. So the next morning, I email Amico a picture of an orbital sunrise. Because we use Greenwich Mean Time on station, I have a 5 hour head start, and I know this will be waiting for her when she wakes up. I tell her that this photo is not for social media, but just for her. Later, she tells me this is just the sort of virtual hug she has been hoping for. I can't be there to make things easier for her, but I can at least let her know I'm thinking of her. That was so cute. Yes, he blocks emotions. Yeah, and I think he was doing a lot of things for social media, a lot of things. So she was feeling left out. She wanted just something personal, something just for her. She wanted to feel that he's thinking of her. He's not only there making like experiments and science, and she's like somebody, like he always told her, do that, are my kids okay, are your daughters okay? And she felt like a coworker. She didn't feel like a partner anymore. So I think this is why yeah, but I was happy to see that. Yeah, well, it's not that he doesn't have time. No, you have to make time. You have to make time. If you want a happy girlfriend, you have to make time, because otherwise she won't be happy. And if she's not happy, you're not happy. So yeah. Well, in space, yeah, at least he had a lot of things, but he could make time, like 10 minutes or something from his whole day, to make a nice gesture for her. I think you make time. It's not like you can't. You have to, like, if you want, if you really want. So another thing that I really loved is that when he was like almost at the end of his mission, like he almost sat like for a full year, and he knew he was about to come home, and he made a list to Amico what he wants. Stuff I want at home. That was so funny for me to read. Gatorade, the old school green kind. Dogfish Head 60-minute India Pale Ale. A 6-pack of Miller High Life. Green seedless grapes. Strawberries. Salad stuff. Cabernet. La Crema Chardonnay, and bottled water. Well, yes, but you have to. I know when you put it like this, sounds like sounds like a terrible thing to take 10 minutes for your girlfriend, but you can die in any moment. So it's like okay, let's not make time for anybody and anything, because what if we die? But yeah, but what if we don't die and we get up on earth and nobody is there to care for us, because, well, so yeah, depends on how you put it. Yeah. So I think that Scott Kelly says a lot of what he's missing. So when I've read this thing, what he was missing, I started to see that we should appreciate that we are on earth more, these kind of things. So which are these things? I miss cooking. I miss chopping fresh food. The smell vegetables give up when you first slice into them. I miss the smell of the unwashed skins of fruit, the sight of fresh produce piled high in grocery stores. I miss grocery stores, the shelves of bright colors and the glossy tile floors and the strangers wandering the aisles. I miss people. I miss the experience of meeting new people and getting to know them, learning about a life different from my own, hearing about things people experienced that I haven't. I miss the sound of children playing, which always sounds the same no matter their language. I miss the sound of people talking and laughing in another room. I miss rooms. I miss doors and door frames and the creak of wood floorboards when people walk around in old buildings. I miss sitting on my couch, sitting on a chair, sitting on a bar stool. I miss the feeling of resting after opposing gravity all day, exactly missing Earth gravity. I miss the rustle of papers, the flap of book pages turning. I miss drinking from a glass. I miss setting things down on a table and having them stay there. I miss the sudden chill of wind on my back, the warmth of sun on my face. I miss showers. I miss running water in all its forms, washing my face, washing my hands. I miss sleeping in a bed, the feel of sheets, the heft of a comforter, the welcoming curve of a pillow. I miss the color of clouds at different times of day and the variety of sunrises and sunsets on Earth. So yes, this is really nice. He talks about what he's missing, but he's also thinking about how he will be feeling after he will no longer be in space. So yeah, sun on your face, yeah. So I also think about what I'll miss about this place when I'm back on Earth. It's a strange feeling. This nostalgia in advance. Nostalgia for things I'm still experiencing every day and that often right now annoy me. Yes, I know I will miss the friendship and camaraderie of the 14 people I have flown with on this year-long mission. I'll miss the view of Earth from the cupola. I know I will miss the sense that I'm surviving by my wits, the sense that life-threatening challenges could come along and that I will rise to meet them, that every single thing I do is important, that every day could be my last. Ooh, that's so well written. I love this. I love this kind of things. So it's like he talks about packing up to leave space. He was like, yeah, quite poetic. I love this kind of thing. It was the other guy, how was that called, that was singing on his guitar in space? Oh my god, with mustache. Oh, I have like a memory loss. What's his name? Oh, and he's also like quite poetic and writing his songs and doing his guitar things, and yeah. So he says that the return to Earth will take about 3.5 hours with many steps we must get through successfully. So one of the things we do to counteract the symptoms of low blood pressure on our return to Earth is ingesting water and salt to try to increase our plasma volume before we return. So NASA gives us a range of options that include chicken broth, a combination of salt tablets and water, and AstroAid. AstroAid, a rehydration drink developed specially for astronauts. Ooh, nice. It sounds so nice. AstroAid. Yeah. Um, so the Russians prefer more salt and less liquid, in part because they prefer not to use the diaper. Do you know that astronauts, when they go into space, they wear diapers because of the all of that pressure of that like rocket going into air, and when I didn't know that. Yes, yes, astronauts wear diapers when they go into space. It was at the beginning of the book. Wait. And not also that, they like, it's a tradition for them like to pee on the bus on which it takes them to the rocket. It's a tradition started by Yuri Gagarin. Amazing. And I didn't know that thing. So yes, where is that? Ah ha ha ha. It was at the beginning of the book anyway. It says that yes, look, I'm reading it for the beginning of the book, so just because you are sitting and watching me, so this is like at the beginning of the book, and it describes that the astronauts are wearing diapers. So first, Gennady was one of the Russian people that went with him. So first, Gennady is called into a decent room to strip down and put on his diaper, cardiac electrodes, and a fresh pair of white long underwear meant to absorb sweat and shield us from the rubber of the Sokol suit. When Gennady returns, Misha, another Russian guy, goes in to diaper up. Then I go, Scott Kelly. Whenever I do this, I chuckle to myself that I wouldn't have thought I'd be in diapers again until much later in life. So yes, the astronauts, all the astronauts that went to space wear diapers. Yes. So I was like, oh my god, I thought about everybody like, do you want to become an astronaut? Do you remember what you asked me? And I like, that's what does it mean? Hello. That's what it means to become an astronaut. So when you asked me, I was thinking about that. So yes, I'm talking about a very nice book about the 1 year traveling of Scott Kelly into space, and it's with a lot of details and everything, and I'm almost at the end. It's quite a thick book, but it's so nice if you're like into science and into a lot of technical details. You will love it. So he says that Scott Kelly prepared, so they had like with a 1 year mission almost finished, and they were preparing to return to Earth. And Scott Kelly didn't want to drink Astro Aid. I stick to drinking lots of water and wearing the diaper. So astronauts, when they go to space, they wear diapers, and when they prepare to come back to the planet, they also wear diapers. So my image of a fancy astronaut just got ruined, because now I know they are all wearing diapers. Not sexy. So yeah. So yes, I don't know, I am streaming, it's water and salt something. The same webcam, I don't know, I'm streaming from my phone because my laptop got broken 2 days ago, and I got virused and I lost data, and somebody's trying to get it fixed for me. But I wanted to stream and to talk about this book so badly that I was like, okay, I'm gonna stream from my phone. So actually it's the camera from my phone. So yeah, Astro Aid, I told you, it's something. Well, I will Google it to find exactly what it's like. But imagine if people would have this, but it's a water and salt. I don't think it's very, very fancy. So Scott Kelly talks about his exhaustion. So the 1 year long mission almost finished, and he says that I find it hard to stay awake. I don't know if I'm tired just from today or from the whole year. Sometimes you don't feel how exhausting an experience has been until it's over, and you allow yourself to stop ignoring it. So I think it's the adrenaline. I don't know if it happened to you, but it happened to me, like when you're going through a very stressful situation and you go through it a long and a long and a long and a long time, and you start to get used to it, but you don't feel that exhaustion. But after it's done, it just weighs you down. It's like, I'm so tired. So yeah. So they talk about the experience itself, that so we feel gravity begin to, so the rocket, like the space, it's like they're going down and approaching, it's like Earth, and we are falling at the speed of sound. We fall and wait and watch. In the wrong frame of mind, this would be terrifying, and from what I've heard, some people who have experienced it have been terrified, but I love it. It's like a carnival ride on steroids. So actually he loved that. No, actually, just because I've been talking so much, my lips are so dry, and I am doing this just because I feel like, yeah, I was so stoked about this book that I kept on talking. So yes. So when they got back to Earth, somebody told them, open your mouth. A voice reminds me in Russian, if we don't keep our tongues away from our teeth, we could bite them off on impact. So yeah, when the hatch opens, the Soyuz fills with the rich smell of air and the bracing cold of winter. It smells fantastic. We bump fists. So they are back on Earth. So what did he learn? Your dinosaur shirt. Yeah, it's still, I haven't sold it yet, so no, I haven't sold it yet. Personally, I've learned that nothing feels as amazing as water. I'll never take water for granted again. Misha says he feels the same way. So I don't know. I've learned from watching my mother train to become a police officer that small steps add up to giant leaps. I've learned how important it is to sit and eat with other people. Yeah. Yeah. It's multiplied. I've learned what it means to be together with family. I've learned that most problems aren't rocket science, but when they are rocket science, you should ask a rocket scientist. In other words, I don't know everything, so I've learned to seek advice and counsel and to listen to experts. I've learned that a year in space contains a lot of contradictions. A year away from someone you love both strains the relationship and strengthens it in new ways. I've learned that climbing into a rocket that might kill me is both a confrontation of mortality and an adventure that makes me feel more alive than anything else. I've learned that grass smells great, and wind feels amazing, and rain is a miracle. I will try to remember how magical these things are for the rest of my life. I've also learned that our planet is the most beautiful thing I've ever seen, and that we're lucky to have it. I've learned a new empathy for other people, including people I don't know and people I disagree with. I've started letting people know I appreciate them, which can sometimes freak them out at first. It's a bit out of character, but it's something I'm glad to have gained and hope to keep. Yeah. Mm. So yeah. He says like, I also know that if we want to go to Mars, it will be very, very difficult, and it will cost a great deal of money, and it may cost human lives. But I know now that if we decide to do it, we can. Yes, we can. So, Amiko Kauderer. That's her full name, Amiko Kauderer. It sounds German. I don't know. So we are at like acknowledgements. Yeah, I know a lot of people, like, because of my very soothing voice, fall asleep, but I think this is like almost 2 hours stream. If you play it from the beginning, I think you might be able to sleep on my voice. And he talks about his partner, I mean his girlfriend, Amiko, and he says that Amiko said to me once, teamwork makes the dream work, and spaceflight is the biggest team sport there is. So, spending any amount of time in space takes the support and collaboration of thousands of people. Above all, I have to recognize my partner and now fiancé, Amiko Kauderer. I hope the pages of this book make clear what it meant to me that she was with me day by day throughout this journey, experiencing together its challenges and triumphs and its highs and lows. Well, no, Earth is like, Earth is partially dying. It's not okay. Our Earth is not okay. We have a lot of pollution. So yeah. So I've tried to express what a crucial role she's played in this mission success, but words can never express the role she has played in my life the last 8 years. Thank you, Amiko. So yeah, love story. So yeah, she amazing thing. Although he divorced his first wife, he thanks my ex-wife Leslie lent her willing support, accepting the role of a full-time single parent, ensuring our daughters were safe and cared for back on Earth each time I went to work off the planet. Thank you. So yeah, he says a lot of thanks. And his final thank you. If you haven't been like in the beginning of the book, he talks about he was like ADHD kind of student. It was very difficult for him at school to concentrate. People thought he was a failure, that he's not going to become anything. He had an alcoholic father. Scott Kelly had a hard life, and he was almost a drop off, had bad grades. And what made him change? He read a book. Oh, really? It's not a big deal. It's just you're just like anybody else, but you have a problem focusing a little. That's all. So Scott Kelly also had ADHD. So interesting thing. What changed his life? His life was changed when he read a book. The book that he has read is called The Right Stuff by Tom Wolfe. So his final thank you is to this book. Look, he says right here, like, and he says like, and finally I have to thank Tom Wolfe for his early inspiration. I truly believe if I had not read The Right Stuff as an 18-year-old, I would not have written this book or had the privilege of flying in space. So actually, now we can see the power of a book. So, the power of a book to change somebody's life, it's amazing. Because, and I was telling at the beginning of my stream that I found out about Tom Wolfe. Wolfe. Tom Wolfe, from wolf, what with an E at the end. Yeah, this here. Welcome. So from this book I got inspired. So when Scott Kelly was in space, he took a book with him. It's in, if you search in my previous streams, yes, oh good, in one of my previous streams I talked about this book. It's called Endurance, Shackleton's Incredible Voyage by Alfred Lansing, and I heard about this book from this book. Scott Kelly told in this book that when he got demoralized and sad and depressed in space, he was reading Alfred Lansing's book. You can find me talking about that book in one of my previous streams. I'm talking about that book. Very good book. Such a good book. Yeah, so it has the same. Oh, wait. This is the book. So Scott Kelly. So let's like Scott Kelly had a book in this space mission, and I found out about the book from this book. So this is the book. I talked about it. So this is the book that Scott Kelly read in space. It's the book of a crew and his captain lost in true story. Their ship sank in Antarctica. They had to endure so many things. They were lost, abandoned, no food, no nothing. So yeah, if you want a nice surviving story, this is the book. So yeah, and funny thing, do you notice? Endurance. So Scott Kelly inspired himself from this book. So yeah, yes, quite interesting. So guys, I thank you so much for being with me on this chat. With like my phone is sitting suspended on. I have such an improvisation to be able to stream from my phone. You wouldn't imagine. So I'm not even sure where I should look. I think here. So yeah, I had a great time. And yeah, I have the laws of human nature. Yes, I do. I could talk about it. It's quite a big book. So I will talk about many books. Usually on Sunday I get online and talk about books. So yeah, I think I have like one book per week. So yeah, I will talk about every single book that I have here in my back and many others. So yeah, but I hope that I will fix my stream and fix my laptop and to be able to stream from my laptop. Yeah. So yeah, on Sunday, like, yeah, so I totally recommend you this book. It's really nice. The pictures in it are really nice. Going into space is really nice, and I love that. I love the story. I love that Scott Kelly also shared a bit of his relationship issues and his first marriage, which has failed. And yeah, very interesting. Really, you should. should buy them. Actually, yeah, I would buy them. I like they're awesome, especially now in quarantine. Like I where am I from? I live in Romania. Yeah. So now I don't know what's your time zone, but for me now it's early in the morning. It's like 10:30 in the morning. So yeah. I think I don't have a PO box, but I am trying. Like I think I will do. I have to improve everything, and I think I'll do a PO box if you would like to send me things. I'd love like to receive books. I'd love to receive books. Is like uh yeah, I could never get tired of books. I'd love to have as many books as possible. So if I'll make a PO box and you'll send me books, I'll be like the happiest girl on the planet. So yeah. Where are you from? If it's already like, where are you from? Mm, yeah, I love books. Costa Rica. Oh, okay. I think books are really, really nice and I love them. And I also love like photography books and yeah, a lot of things. I'm quite a little mouse. So thank you a lot for being here. If you want, just watch my stream from the beginning, so you could be able like to um, get more from this book than you managed to. And we'll see you next time. And I hope you have a lovely day and that um, you're doing quarantine time all right. Yeah. Thank you so so much. I think I'm gonna like grab my phone and streaming from the phone. It's quite. Is it? Oh my god. Okay. So yeah, thank you. But thank you very much. Bye bye. My phone is closing.